Hello and welcome to another edition of the Brian A. Joyce Report. I'm Senator Brian Joyce, and I have the honor of representing you and your family along with the towns of Avon, Braintree, Canton, East Bridgewater, Easton, Milton, Randolph, Sharon, Stoughton, and West Bridgewater in the Massachusetts Senate. The purpose of this program is to keep you up to date on what's happening in the legislature, as well as to discuss the vital issues that affect your lives every day. We'll also introduce you to interesting guests who are some of the Massachusetts' most important decision makers. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Mike Lake, who is seeking the Democratic nomination for Lieutenant Governor for the 2014 election. A native of Melrose, Massachusetts, Mike Lake has devoted his life to public service and to supporting causes that benefit the lives of citizens of the Commonwealth. Mike knows from firsthand experience the struggles that many families deal with each day. After his father's sudden and premature death at the age of 36, Mike was just 5 years old. He was raised by a single mother who had to work multiple jobs to support him and his younger sister. Through their struggles, Mike learned the value of government services like public education and has been inspired to give back through service to our community. In fact, currently Mike serves on 17 boards and committees throughout Greater Boston. As a Director of Development for the United Way of Massachusetts Bay and Merrimack Valley, Mike raised a record-breaking $5.8 million in an effort to end family homelessness and the cycle of poverty in Massachusetts. In his current role as President and CEO of Leading Cities, Mike works with city leaders from around the United States and the world to solve the challenges that communities face. As Lieutenant Governor, Mike will leverage a domestic and international set of best practices to deliver solutions that address the critical issues confronting the 351 cities and towns in the Commonwealth. On behalf of our Commonwealth and Governor Patrick, Mike has been instrumental in promoting Massachusetts as a gateway for European-based businesses through a cooperation agreement signed by the Governor and President Mas of Catalonia, Spain. Mike built upon the success with a partnership agreement between Massport and the Port Authority of Lisbon, Portugal, and is currently developing an agreement with the Republic of Ireland to create more jobs here in Massachusetts. Mike's professional experiences, from being appointed as President Clinton's Special Assistant for White House Operations to his current role as President and CEO of Leading Cities, have enriched his vision that our Commonwealth must foster job growth and enhance the innovation economy to succeed in the global economic stage and ensure the opportunity for prosperity for every citizen of our Commonwealth. Mike, thanks for coming and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's great to be back.
Did I miss anything in that bio?
That was pretty extensive. I'm impressed. You're thorough.
You look like you're about 18, but you're a pretty accomplished 35-year-old, right?
Oh well, thank you. I appreciate that.
You've quite a resume there for a 35-year-old man.
Well, as you said, I've been fortunate in my life to have some great experiences, and I've learned through struggles of my family with the premature loss of my father. So. My family's struggles are no different than so many families across the Commonwealth. I have been inspired by the opportunities I've been given and hope to give back.
So those experiences that you've had, as a young man and now in your professional life, do you think those experiences prepare you or make you a better candidate and indeed a better Lieutenant Governor?
I do. I think, particularly in my current role as you mentioned, President and CEO of a nonprofit organization called Leading Cities, I have an opportunity to work with cities around the world. I believe our next Lieutenant Governor should be working with every one of the 351 cities and towns right here in the Commonwealth. In the work that I do, it's about identifying best practices, solutions to municipal challenges that cities all across the world are facing, whether it be not enough affordable housing, not enough jobs, too many cars on the roads with not enough capacity to handle them. The challenges are the same. The opportunity for us to really make a difference is right there within our grasp. And by learning from the best practices of other cities and towns, and as the next Lieutenant Governor, to be able to bring those solutions right here to the Commonwealth, it's a huge opportunity for us to move Massachusetts forward. Well,
it's interesting in that we have 351 cities and towns that often each is a silo unto itself. And in fact, in many of our towns, there's a town government side and school government side. And sometimes we'll have duplication of effort within our cities and towns, and among cities and towns that perhaps a regional approach could help, or as you suggest, developing the best practices from one community to another. So you see that as part of the role as Lieutenant Governor, the kind of liaison between state and municipal government?
Actually, I'm glad you used that word. If I could boil down the Lieutenant Governor's job into one word, it would be to be a liaison. A liaison to the cities and towns, a liaison to our legislators, whether it be at the state level or at the federal level. And my 21st century vision to the Lieutenant Governor's office is to add a new layer to that, which is a liaison to the rest of the world. To promote Massachusetts as the #1 place in the United States for businesses to bring their jobs and their investment, to put our citizens of the Commonwealth back to work. Massachusetts has everything they could dream of. We have an incredibly talented workforce. We have infrastructure. We have sectors that range from manufacturing to scientists who are working on a cure to cancer. Massachusetts really does have it all, as our state slogan says. But the fact of the matter is, we're operating in a global economy, and we're not fully competing in that economy, in that global arena. We have to be more proactive. We have to sell our story. We have to be out there to attract those businesses right here to Massachusetts. And I'll tell you, the competition is strong. Right now, if you were in Spain, you could watch commercials for New York. If you were in China, you could visit California's trade office. Massachusetts needs to be out there, be a part of that international competition, because we are losing jobs and opportunities to other states.
So we have survived this Great Recession perhaps better than most of our sister states.
Sure.
But, as you and I were discussing earlier, a number of people, in fact, far too many people, remain unemployed or underemployed. While we may have weathered the storm better than most, still, we have, I think, 7.2% or so of our neighbors are unemployed and a lot more underemployed. So that you see as a role of the Lieutenant Governor to help create jobs for these folks, and how would you do it?
Absolutely. First would be to try and attract those businesses from around the world, and that means from within the United States.
So you play to our strengths, right?
Exactly.
What are our strengths as you see them?
#1 is our talent. We have some of the world's greatest higher educational institutions, and that's creating a workforce right here in Massachusetts that serves as a magnet to draw those businesses in. Because the #1 resource that a business needs, especially knowledge-based economy, is the talent. So our challenge, therefore, is to actually not only attract that talent through our universities and colleges, but to also retain that talent. And Leading Cities was part of a study that identified the fact that 52% of greater Boston area college graduates leave Massachusetts almost immediately upon graduation. And then another 10% leave us over the next 7 years. Now the good news is after 7 years we've got them locked in. They're here, they've built their roots in this community, and now they're part of it. But the real loss is 62% of our workforce.
So the founder of Facebook was here in one of our universities. The founder of Microsoft was here in one of our universities. But they left and they sought their fame and fortune in Silicon Valley. So part of the challenge is keeping that talent here to grow and create companies.
And you're absolutely right, but it's not just the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, although obviously it's great if we keep them. It's also all the people that Mark Zuckerberg needs to employ. Those are the individuals that keep businesses moving forward and building success on success. And in Massachusetts, unfortunately, we have lost so many. Now, one of the most common reasons you hear that people leave Massachusetts, #1 is cost of living, #2 is the nightlife, and #3 is the climate. Well,
so let's talk about those. So in terms of cost of living, our oldest is 24, and he graduated from college, and like many of his classmates, took off to San Francisco, to Silicon Valley, to where all these startup companies are, and hoping to make it big. And it's incredible how these young, bright kids are drawn to San Francisco and Silicon Valley, where Google and Facebook and many of these other companies are. Cost of living there is actually higher than it is here in Boston. And I can tell you that because
you're paying the bills.
Well, the first company he went to work for was a startup that it didn't start up. So cost is an issue, but it's not dispositive, it seems.
Well, your intuition is exactly right. The study we did actually finally debunked the myth that cost of living is the #1 reason people are leaving. And the reason, or the reason we were able to debunk it is the fact that the #1 destination out of all the people that leave, #1 is New York City, the most expensive city in the world. And by the way, it's the #1 destination by a factor of 3.
I can tell you I have a child that just moved to New York City as well. So mine choose the two most expensive, but it's Manhattan's the most expensive,
Yep.
Manhattan borough of New York City, and San Francisco is second.
That's right.
So,
and San Francisco, by
yeah.
the way, is the second most popular destination for people leaving Massachusetts.
the young people, the young
Young
professionals
people. That's
that we
correct.
want to, now we want to retain them because we want them to, help grow our economy. This is the lifeblood, right?
That's exactly right. I mean, Massachusetts, getting back to your earlier question about how we create more jobs, Massachusetts needs to create that entrepreneurial ecosystem right here in the Commonwealth.
So let me ask you this. You're 35 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Do you relate to these young people more than a guy like me?
Well, I'm kind of aging out of that bracket, but I'm recently from that, and it is difficult. There are reasons to explore other places, whether it be international or domestic, because not only is it that when you graduate, you may not have a job lined up, and you said an important word when you were talking about your son. He left hoping to get that job in San Francisco. We are losing people on the hope of a job elsewhere, not because they have a job elsewhere. So we need to keep and instill that hope right here of getting a job in Massachusetts.
But the second thing you talked about was nightlife and really quality of life is, quality of life issues for young people. And I was really struck to learn this, both from the data that you've produced, but also from, my experience as a parent, that a lot of these young people getting out of college, they see Boston as a street that maybe rolls up the sidewalks at night, or the MBTA doesn't run late enough, or it's interesting I never would have imagined that not having the MBTA run past midnight may be an impediment to our economic growth.
Not only is it an impediment, there's other things that factor into this. For instance, as you know, the legislature is responsible for liquor licenses in Boston. Well, in Boston, if you're looking for a liquor license right now in Back Bay, it's about $500,000. Now you compare that to somewhere like Medford, where it's $7,000. The business model of an establishment that has that liquor license is very different as a result. You either cater to the quantity, where you're trying to sell as much alcohol as possible to as many people as possible in as short a period of time as possible, or you're catering to quality. Either way, you're missing out that young professional who doesn't quite have the wallet for the quality and doesn't want to be mixed in with the college crowd.
Well, I'm happy to tell you, I actually have legislation to address that, replicating what we did here in Milton, but we can talk about that later. But the point is, these quality of life issues impact young people. So the first thing you talked about was cost, second was these quality of life issues, and third, how do we retain young talent? We can't change the climate. What else can we do? We can change maybe the economic climate or the social climate, not the temperature.
Well, and that's an important thing, because out of the top 3 destinations, New York and Washington, D.C. are 2 of them. So the only one with a better climate, and personally I would argue I'd rather snow than rain all the time. So Northern California isn't all that attractive either, in my opinion. But that's just me. Climate, I don't think, is so much an issue as we make it out to be. And what I do believe is that those 3 things that I mentioned, cost of living, the kind of the nightlife, and the climate, are more the complaints of the people who have stayed rather than the reasons of the people who have left. So we're not addressing the real reasons, which is jobs. When kids graduate in college, they need a job. That's the first thing that they have to worry about, because those student loans come due 6 months later. You have that short window of time to make sure you're earning enough income to pay off your living expenses, and all the debt that you've incurred while being a student.
So, Tip O'Neill once said the 3 most important things about politics are jobs, jobs, and jobs. So you've had some experience now helping to create or bring jobs to Massachusetts through your current role with Leading Cities. And that's something you'd like to bring with you to the Lieutenant Governor's office, right? So you want to help create jobs, make Massachusetts a more desirable destination for companies from around the world, and to retain our own, college students, the talented workforce that some of which we're losing. And then the third thing you mentioned was act as a liaison to the cities and towns throughout the state and help each of those cities and towns develop their best practices. What are some of the other things that you see? Because most people don't know what Lieutenant Governor does, truth be told.
Sure.
The Lieutenant Governor who just stepped down, Tim Murray, had a very close working relationship with Governor Patrick. Yeah. That was a mold we saw with Governor Weld and Lieutenant Governor Salucci, very close working relationship. We've also had situations where, Lieutenant Governor Tom O'Neill, Tip O'Neill's son, ran against Governor Dukakis, so there was a bit of a rivalry there. Where do you see yourself fitting in with whoever is the successful gubernatorial candidate?
Well, first of all, let me just say, I think we do have a tremendous field of candidates running for governor. I'd be happy to work with any of them. Most of them I've known for a number of years and know that we could work well together. The others I'm getting to know on the campaign trail and know that we also could work well together. I think the most important thing in terms of my relationship with the governor, should I be elected as a lieutenant governor, will be to work as a partner. It's a word that I take very, very seriously, and to me has a lot of deep meaning to it. To be a partner means you care as much about the other person and their goals as you do about yourself and your own goals. And I think it's imperative for the governor and lieutenant governor to share those goals, to make sure that there is a unified vision for the Commonwealth. And that's, by the way, one of the reasons why having a lieutenant governor is so important. It's not just a filler should the governor leave the state or be incapacitated in some way or leave office. It's a role that continues a vision forward. So whatever the next governor's vision is, I will see it as part of my role to embody that vision and help move it forward.
Okay, let's shift gears. Talk a little bit about education. Now, we've had some great strides in recent years in investing in our public schools, the Education Reform Act of 1993 and the literally billions of dollars we've invested in our public schools. They've paid off. We see, absent a better measurement, we look to the MCAS, the standardized examinations, and we see the recent scores are up, that we continue to make progress, that our public schools are among the best in the nation. Still, we have two issues. One is the underperforming school districts that remain. The state just took over, or announced we're taking over 3 underperforming schools in the state. So what do we do to continue to improve our public schools and specifically address those chronically underperforming school districts?
Sure. Well, first of all, you mentioned the MCAS. I believe that the MCAS, which, by the way, as you know, stands for Massachusetts Comprehensive Assessment System. It really should be the MCAT because it's not a system, it's a test. And what that means is that it's not looking at the entire picture. So I do have issues with MCAS as being our lone measure. I do think it has allowed us to get a sense of where some of our schools stand and to be able to direct the investment in that education appropriately. But I also feel that the MCAS system has a lot of room for improvement, particularly as many criticize the MCAS system for, is forcing teachers to teach to a test and not to a student. I can tell you from my own experience, when I was in 2nd and 3rd grade, I was in resource classes. And it was only because of my 3rd grade teacher and my mother working closely together that recognized that, or felt that I was more bored than over-challenged. And it was their recommendation to the school to not only take me out of resources, but to move me into the advanced 4th grade class. I mean, it was literally from one end of the spectrum to the other. That one decision changed forever the course of my life. You know how many students are bored with their education and as a result don't make it through to graduation. That may have been me. So I think it's critically important to know that every student is being taught to individually, that every teacher has that opportunity to work with the student to meet his or her needs and to help them meet their full potential. That to me is the greatest thing we can do for our education system in Massachusetts.
So you're clearly passionate about public education. What are some other issues that you would be passionate about as Lieutenant Governor?
Well, economic development is the next thing. Education and jobs. Really, that's what it boils down to, because in my opinion, almost everything stems for that. And then the third would be safe communities. And we've covered economic development, but I do want to say one more thing. As Lieutenant Governor, we talked about being a liaison with legislators. Legislators, I see...
And by the way,
yeah,
who would be the most important one for your liaison with?
I would have to say Senator Brian A. Joyce.
Good answer.
But in seriousness, it's legislators who are the administration's eyes and ears. They're our ability, as I see it, to keep a finger on the pulse of what's happening in all the communities across the Commonwealth. And it's legislators who, as you well know, show up at a coffee shop on a Sunday morning or a grocery store in the evening and meet their constituents face to face. They have to answer for the tough votes that they've had to take. That's something that the governor and lieutenant governor have to be keenly aware of. So I think in terms of economic development, that also translates into making sure that we have an economic development strategy that spans the entire Commonwealth, that it's not Greater Boston-centric or inside 128 belt. And I think this is one of the greatest legacies of the Patrick Murray administration, that they really do have an economic development strategy that spans the Commonwealth, whether it be the offshore wind turbine assembly plant in New Bedford, nanotechnology in Lowell, life sciences in Worcester, the high-performance computing center out in Holyoke. You know, they've spread the wealth, so to speak, and every one of those represents an opportunity to create jobs and put people back to work. We have other things that we need to be working on. For instance, this is just a little fun fact, although it has a somewhat tragic side to it as well. Do you know, of all the wood products used in Massachusetts, only 2% of the wood is actually sourced from the Commonwealth? And yet, for over a 4-month period of time this year, we shut down 3 sawmills in Massachusetts. In some communities, the sawmill is the economy. If we just increased our use of locally sourced wood to 4%, we could keep every sawmill in Massachusetts sustainable for the future. So we have to think creatively, we have to think positively, we have to think about a strategy for the entire Commonwealth. And then the last thing I'll say is safe communities. We really do have to work on gun violence issues. I'm so pleased to see that this issue has come up and we're facing it again in Massachusetts, despite the fact that we already have some of the toughest laws in the country. But Massachusetts is not new to being a leader. We led on healthcare, we led on gay marriage. We have an opportunity right now to lead on gun violence. And that means putting in sensible measures, whether it be background checks, allowing only 1 gun purchase a month, all of the things that have been talked about, and certainly connecting our databases so that those who are suffering from mental illnesses can be tracked, and those who are about to sell a gun or license a gun know that illness exists. These are just practical measures that we can be taking to keep our community safe in Massachusetts.
Okay, so we've covered biographical information. We've covered a little bit of policy.
Yeah.
Now let's talk politics.
All right.
So give me a roadmap how you get elected lieutenant governor. What's your strategy?
Great question. I think it's no longer just an idea, but in the last several statewide cycles, we have proven that in order for Democrats to win statewide, it is a necessity to have a strong grassroots organization. We are about a year away from the election, and I am incredibly proud to say that we have more than half of the Commonwealth being organized with volunteer coordinators already. People spread out across Massachusetts who are organizing from the Senate district straight down to the precinct captain level. These are opportunities for citizens to get involved and to help shape their Commonwealth, and it's certainly an opportunity for our campaign to leverage their enthusiasm, their drive, to really shape our campaign moving forward, to reach out to their friends, their neighbors, the people they agree with and the people they don't agree with, as Governor Patrick likes to say, and to really know that we're getting our message out there.
All right, so we have met some extraordinary candidates already. We met with Joe Avalone, who's running for governor. We met with Tom Conroy, who's running for state treasurer. And today we have Mike Lake, an extraordinarily talented candidate for lieutenant governor.
Thank you.
I want to give you an opportunity. One of the things that I really detest about seeking high office today is the amount of time you have to spend on fundraising and paying for television commercials. So here's some free airtime for you. You look right at that camera right there. I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to make your best pitch to the voters why they should vote for Mike Lake for Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you. Well, my name is Mike Lake. I'm a candidate for Lieutenant Governor. But as I like to say, I'm not running for an office. I'm running to make a difference in the lives of the people that you and I care most about, our friends, our family, and our neighbors. You see, in my family, as we already talked about, we went through our struggles. Having lost my dad when he was just 36 years old and I was just 5, forever changed how our family would operate. I know what it means to struggle, and I know the struggles so many families in Massachusetts are going through today. It's why I believe so strongly in what I call the Massachusetts promise. The promise of high-quality education, the promise of safe communities for our children to grow up in, and the promise of jobs that pay a livable wage. I think that last point, a livable wage, is critically important to the future of Massachusetts. It's an opportunity for us to make sure that every person who works a full work week has the ability to put the food on the table that they need and keep the roof over their head and their family's head. That, to me, is the very least we can do to make sure that Massachusetts is not only successful but thrives in the 21st century. If you believe in that Massachusetts promise, the promise for all of us to move forward together, then I urge you to join our campaign. Be a part of our grassroots effort. You can learn more by visiting my website at electmikelake.com or by calling me at 978-704-1776. Again, together we know that we can change the future of Massachusetts. And as Senator Ed Markey reminded us on the campaign trail, though our population is made up of 20% by young people, they represent 100% of our future. Our future is today. The decisions we make today will impact our tomorrow. Together we have the opportunity to build the strongest Massachusetts yet. I welcome your support, and I ask for your vote and consideration.
Very well done. Okay, unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. I'd like to expend special thanks to Mike for taking time out of his busy schedule to join us and talk about issues facing the Commonwealth and about his candidacy for Lieutenant Governor. Again, a very impressive candidate, Mike Lake. As always, if you have any questions or comments for me, I can be reached at brian.a.joyce@masenate.gov or by calling me at 617-722-1643. You can also find me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter at Brian A. Joyce. Thank you. I'm Senator Brian Joyce, and I appreciate the opportunity to represent your interests in the Massachusetts Senate, and I thank you for joining us here today.